All righty. Okay, guys, welcome to another happy hour with Culturally Creative Travel. Glad everybody showed up. I am Douglas Burns, your host. Cheers, Prost, Christos, and Nesti, whatever you want to cheers with. Joining us today is Kenny Judd of Collette Vacations. And we're going to be talking about domestic travel opportunities. And the reason we're talking about domestic today, in the last one of these that I hosted, we had a number of people that were very interested in traveling domestically around the United States and North America for a variety of reasons, but understandably so. And the United States is a wonderful place to travel. We have people all the time who come in from other countries to visit our country, and we live in a continental country. We don't think of it that way. Oftentimes, we often forget that we spread from coast to coast as an actual continent between us, and there's so much to see and do in this country, and we just don't travel our own backyard very often. So we want to talk about those places today that we can travel to and visit and see, and what opportunities we may not think about very often, or that we may think about and then forget about, but we want to maybe concentrate on over this next year, because I really do believe domestic travel in the late 2020, 2021 is going to be where people are going to want to travel to. So, Kenny, Collette Vacations, y'all been around for over 100 years now. My wife and I got invited to your 100th anniversary here just 2 years ago, I think it was. And
That's correct.
we had such a wonderful time celebrating that milestone. Y'all are the oldest operating, or I should say the longest operating tour company. There's not too many people with gray beards over there, but um, talk to me. What are you guys seeing? Because you have a huge domestic catalog. I mean, I counted out. I didn't count the individual itineraries. I just counted out locations, and I've counted over 20 locations. And then you've got multiple tours to a number of these different locations. So talk to me. What are the highlights? What are the spots that you see that are really, really popular domestically?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. We're in our 102nd year, so family owned and operated. It's something we've been doing for a long time. So we feel like we've got a pretty good knack on the travel game, and specifically when it comes to touring. And when you're talking about domestic, we tend to kind of just include Canada. We have a Canada office, so we kind of just bring that all together. And you're spot on. North America, it is definitely going to be a hot trend next year. And obviously, with everything happening in the world, it's a no-brainer. And Canada, for me, I always tie right in. You nailed it. We have not just different locations all over the U.S., but different types of tours. And that's something, that we really try to focus on when you're talking about the national parks. I mean, there is so much beauty right there that people don't realize outside of just the Grand Canyon. I hear about that all the time. Oh, I've been to the Grand Canyon. But have you been to Bryce? Have you been to Zion? Have you been up into the northern part of some of these national parks and some of the areas? And so, that spreads throughout the entire country. You're talking about the Appalachian Mountains and the Smokies, and we have different varieties up in New York. A lot of people go to New York, but they may not get up to, northern New York or some of the western parts of there. There's so much to see and so much to do that we really try to bring a wide variety so that it's not narrowed down just to one area. We started off as a motor coach company as we built our company. So we're used to motor coaching the places, and we really wanted to expand outside of that and touch each part of the country.
Well, I know the national parks are really popular. My parents here 5-6 years ago went on a national parks tour, and my dad had a complaint, and my mom had a call. She finally got she was so excited she got cell phone signal midway through their trip. They had to call me. I'm like, Mom, you're on vacation. Why are you calling? It's like, your dad's got a complaint. I go, oh God, what is it? Not enough time looking at the rocks. Okay, now my dad was a geologist. He was the only one on that bus complaining about not enough time looking at rocks. I mean, if that's the only thing he had to complain about, really, I mean, yeah, the Bryce Canyon, Zion National Park. Yosemite. You've got some wonderful trips to Yosemite as well, including some really unique, I think, winter itinerary. We don't tend to think of traveling to the national parks in the wintertime. So maybe give me a little information on your wintertime trips and your Yosemite offerings.
Yeah, the Yosemite, Yellowstone, some of those areas, they're so summer heavy. And we're lucky enough that our tour managers work for us. They're trained by us. So a lot of times we take our product suggestions right from them because they're on the ground, they're seeing it, they're talking to the clients. There's no better resource than them. And so we've had some that live up in those areas, and they said, we're really missing out on some of these winter type programs, and if you live in the South, you might want to go to the winter when it's a little bit, cooler in the areas, and vice versa. And so we've created some unique itineraries that are really focusing on, it is going to be colder, it is going to be snow, but that's what it's about. We're going on sled rides, we have reindeers, we have different type things. When it's a little bit warmer, we're doing open air trams that are traveling throughout. And you nailed it. And by the way, my stepdad is a petroleum engineer, so he's basically a geologist. So I too grew up with him looking at rocks that I had no fun at all in. But that is something we really try to balance when we go to these areas, because some people want to go walk around and hike. Some people want to take pictures. Some people want to stare at rocks. And so we really make it a point not to just drive by in some of these national parks. We want to stop. We want to get out. When you're talking about some of the unbelievable trees and the history in some of these areas, our cowboy country is one that I love because, well, I'm originally from Oklahoma. So, being a cowboy, but jumping into some of those areas as far as Costner's Museum, and he has a whole entire history up just outside of Yellowstone, where he talks about dances with the wolves and the way that the Native Americans used every part of the buffalo and some of those things. So, for us, touring is not just about seeing things. It's about learning. It's about experiencing. We truly try to push that cultural immersion, because that's what travel's all about.
I can't disagree at all. I mean, getting up there, meeting the people, meeting the locals, tasting the local food, which I think is the most iconic thing of any culture, is tasting that local food, but hearing the local stories too. And you can only imagine the stories involved here in the United States and again in Canada. The Rockies, either the Canadian Rockies or the Colorado Rockies, unbelievably gorgeous itineraries. And you do my favorite thing in Colorado. You take the train. You take the train.
We do. We take the train in Colorado and in Canada. We actually hit trains in both. Most people don't realize in Colorado, down in Durango, there's still the steam powered train, and you have the opportunity to travel down there. I was lucky enough. My best friend was a doctor who lived in Durango. And so I'd visit him and spend some time there. But, there's areas you just can't physically drive to that you want to see. And so that's why we utilize some of the third-party vendors when we're on tour. And the steam train, talk about taking you back in time and truly experience it. But some of the areas that you can see when you're on that train that you just can't drive, that's one of my favorite parts of the trip too. And I always talk about that when I talk about Colorado. But some of the unbelievable national parks that are throughout Colorado, we think about Denver and we think about the mountains, but there's so much more that they have to offer. And Canada, you nailed it. Banff Springs up in those areas in Canada, Alberta, it is truly one of the most beautiful places. And, I laugh because you started this off talking about how we fall victim sometimes to realizing what's in our own backyard, right? We don't realize how beautiful of a country North America and the U.S. is. And I did the same thing. I wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand, and I wanted to do all these crazy things. And the first time I went to Canada, I truly was just in awe of how spectacular was the people. And when I travel, I always mark down places that I got to bring my wife back to. And Canada, without a doubt, fell right into that. We're lucky enough with Colorado, it's not too far, but some of these other regions, whether it be by train, motor coach. And one of my favorite things that we do on tour is you talked about local food. We're going to get you out in those local restaurants. We're going to try everything. When I've been in Sedona, I had rattlesnake. I've tried elk. You name it, I've tried at least one time. So I'll try anything once, and then we'll have a conversation about it. But no, it is one of those things that we really want to focus on. And there is so many different ways to travel outside of what I think that we think about. And those are kind of the different opportunities that we like to give, whether it be, a little bit of hiking, a little bit of walking, e-biking, by train, by, motor coach. Those are all there because there is so much to see right here in our backyard.
Absolutely. And we can even go exotic in our own backyard. Just Hawaii, which is a bucket list for so many people, and y'all have a wonderful Hawaii offering. Alaska, which is most people think of, well, I'm going to take an Alaskan cruise, and I don't want to discount Alaskan cruises; they're fantastic trips, but you're only seeing the coastline. You're not really getting to see the interior, and Alaska is such a large state. People forget how big it really is. I mean, we're talking the equivalent of almost a third of the lower 48.
Yep.
It's huge, and you've got some wonderful operators, including, I noticed, a trip to the Iditarod, which unfortunately sold out for next year. But you have the opportunity to go see the Iditarod. What is more iconic than an Alaska trip to go see that race?
Yeah, it is. And one of the focuses that we really have with all of our tours is finding these unique festivals. And, in Canada, the Stampede, right? Being from Oklahoma, the rodeos, but you nailed it. So many people do an Alaskan cruise. And Alaska is one of the most repeated destinations in the world. I believe there's a stat out there that says roughly over 80% of the people. But there's only so many times you can do that cruise. And you nailed one of my favorite tours that we have, getting out into just land. So I've done the cruise. I've seen it. I went from Seattle and I went through the Inside Passage and I came back. Now I want to get out there and I want to see the land because Alaska is an unbelievable territory. And so that's kind of where we spend some of our time. We get out there. We use trains, planes, and automobiles all the way that you can possibly work it. But it's, we have 3 different products. We're rolling out a new exploration tour next year that's going to be just land only Alaska, that won't include any kind of cruise. For those who have seen a cruise and, as you said, the outskirts, now you have an opportunity from a smaller group type tour to really expand into, seeing Alaska as a whole, because, there's a lot of areas that people will talk about, and I've said it all over the country, yeah, you've been to Denver. Yeah, you've been to New York, but have you been to these places? Because these are hot spots that people don't know about. And that's what we really want to get into in some of these land tours. But the races, the festivals, those are massive highlights. We completely operate our dates around those. So we have unique seating. We have tickets that are already taken care of. You don't have to fight the battle of getting online and trying to chase all of those things. And that's what touring is all about. It removes all of the struggles that go into it. Everything's one place. You talk to your agent, everything's taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. It's why my wife and I, our favorite thing to do is tour, and we don't travel any other way. And a lot of people, laugh at that, but it's such an ease to do. Hey, I want to go see the Rose Parade. Hey, I want to go see the race. I don't have to sit in line. I don't have to deal with the tickets. But there is so much more with Alaska and Hawaii for that matter. You mentioned that one of my favorite parts of the Hawaiian tour that we have is actually learning about the movies and going on a little tour behind the scenes to where they shot Jurassic Park and some of these unbelievable historic movies. And so we make that a part of the tour outside of just Pearl Harbor. There's a lot of history in Hawaii that people don't realize.
Yeah, I believe y'all hit like 3 different islands, if I remember the itinerary correctly. So you really do get a chance to see much more than just the beach at Waikiki, which nothing wrong with beach at Waikiki, but I mean, it's a long, Hawaii is still a long flight unless you're on the West Coast and you want to take it in and see what there is to do. If you are just joining us, guys, or if you come in late, we're talking with Kenny Judd of Collette Vacations, a tour operator that's been around for over 100 years, and they got started doing domestic tours. Very first tour, and this is one of the things I loved about the story of Collette. The very first tour was on a little jitney bus. I mean, and you want to talk about a spine rattler. I mean, I took a look at that thing. I would not want to go 5 miles in that bus. And they're taking this thing cross country all the way down to Florida from the Northeast, over dirt roads and everything else 100 years ago, starting your tours.
We did, and it's a fun story to tell. And it was $61.50 to go from New England all the way down to Florida. I lived in Massachusetts for a little bit, and what I've learned is, they spend a lot of time in Florida. That's kind of their track back and forth. So it made sense that that was their first tour. But I agree. Our 100th anniversary that you mentioned earlier, we had the opportunity as Collette employees to see that jitney bus, and I thought, wow, how times have changed. We do tend to ride a little bit more upscale these days. So good news for any of the travelers that want to go on tour. But we also recreated that this year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago. We actually recreated that exact same tour. We took a motor coach from New England all the way down to Florida so we could stop along the way and celebrate.
Tell me you took a modern motor coach and not that jitney bus.
We did.
I can only imagine doing that without the air conditioning these days.
No, we did. Now along the way, we did stop and do some things that we did on our very first tour, which was a lot of fun to get out and walk around. But we did. We started, and the reason we're called Collette, a lot of people get confused. We're owned by the Souls, but Jack Collette was the name of, and he was a veteran that came back, and he just wanted to offer people to see the world right here in the U.S. after traveling. And so that's kind of how we got started, and it's a lot of fun to think about. But you are spot on. To hop on that jitney bus, I tip my cap to those people who are some of our first travelers. We truly appreciate it.
Well, I just want to go over for the people who've kind of joined us a little late that, and here again, this is not a complete list of all your domestic tour offerings. This is just some of the areas, and it's nearly 20 areas of the country. We've got the national parks in Hawaii, the Pacific Northwest, Yellowstone in the Grand Teton area, coastal Maine, Alaska and the Northern Lights, Charleston, South Carolina, which is another area that we just don't visit enough. Mackinac Island, you want to talk about a gem in the United States. Mackinac Island is so unique. I don't think enough people know what's so special about that.
Yeah, it really is. First of all, there's one of my favorite things about that area is there's no vehicles. So we take a ferry, we go across, and we stay at the Grand Hotel. Very famous hotel, the longest porch in the world, and of course, for some of your movie lovers, they will recognize it immediately. That
is the hotel you see on every single photograph of Mackinac Island.
Yep, you nailed it. And we don't just visit; we stay there. And one of the things I love about the hotel is each room is different. You may be in a wilderness room. You may be in an all pink room. You may be in a sports theme room. So each room has its own flair to it. At dinner, we have unbelievable spreads from the hotel. But while you're there, one of the things that really does make this so special is there is no motorized vehicles. You're taking horse carriages. You're walking down. You really have the opportunity to kind of check out, if you will, which is what vacations are about. You're also surrounded by two very unique areas right there. On one side, we have Wisconsin. On one side, we have Michigan. And, we know some of those areas for football. We know some of those areas for some of the hot spots. But there's so many great little villages and towns on your way to Mackinac. It's one of the reasons that I love that area. And you nailed it. That I was going to talk about that, too. I wanted to bring it up because specifically the people out of the South, I probably hear more about that region than anywhere else in the U.S. because once they get there and they have the opportunity to kind of check out, it goes unnoticed. People don't realize it. There's tulip festivals. There's a lot that goes up. There's a strong German history. So, we're having a happy hour, and if you like a beer or two, you're going to find some great German beer up in that area. Frankenmuth has one of the largest Christmas stores in the United States. So there is so much more to offer than, just New York and LA. And Mackinac is one of my favorite places that we visit without a doubt.
It's really one of the highlights of this country, and it's a hidden gem. I really believe it's a hidden gem in the United States. Just continuing down my list, when we mentioned the Colorado Rockies, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Oh, my God, there's so much to see and do in D.C. It's an incredible place to visit. The Albuquerque Balloon Festival. That is a must-see. And if you're a photographer like myself, it's a candy store. Just incredible. The Painted Canyons, Nashville. You've got multiple tours going in and out of Nashville, including a city stay where you're not jumping around every single night. You're in the same place for several nights. Wonderful opportunities. Santa Fe, one of my all-time places. And I've got to dig you on your Santa Fe itinerary, though. You don't take in Taos. And I think you're missing an opportunity by not going up to Taos, New Mexico, just a couple hours up the mountain road. And what a wonderful place to visit with the oldest continuously operating Native American village in the Americas, in North America. Just an incredible place and history and people to visit. I really, y'all have got to add that to your itinerary. I'm just going to throw that out there. And of course, Vermont, New Orleans. San Antonio, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from my office. It's only a couple hours west. Really, some beautiful places all over this country. We're talking about traveling domestically and specifically taking tours today for people who have never taken a tour. And they say, well, it's the United States. I can get in my car. I can drive wherever. What is the advantage of joining a tour group versus going on your own?
I talk about this a lot. And I had no idea until I took this job. I came out of medical sales and stumbled my way into travel. I had a love for travel. I kind of didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And so touring was new to me. And it was one of the things that now I just can't picture traveling any other way. In today's time, with some companies out there that are phenomenal at marketing, you see stuff online, you want to go through it. But for me, it's about the headache. Sometimes when I try to plan my own family vacations, I spend more time researching, looking, putting up deposits, finding how far is the drive, and it's the coordination. Also, the thing about touring that people don't realize is, our tour managers, they're such a key component of travel. I have learned more from my tour managers than I could ever learn reading a book and sitting there and going through it. They've done these tours. They know the hidden gems. They know the stop-offs that you would never think about. You talk about Taos. It's funny. We just had a conversation about that Santa Fe product. And one of our top tour managers lives in Santa Fe. And he actually addressed that, and he talked about it. And we do touch on it in some of our other tours. But he really went in depth, and he gave me more history. I have a minor in history, and I learned more from him in one call than I think that I ever could. And, the little hidden gems along the way, North America, all over the world, it doesn't really matter. There's some great areas to stop off of. Touring is going to remove any kind of headache. We're going to have some of the best hotels. We're going to take care of everything. What I usually tell my people is, can you go tell your travel agent where you want to go? And can you show up on time? That's about it. That's your biggest headache whenever you travel with us, because we're going to take care of the meals. We're going to take care of everything. But for me, there's really three pillars that I focus on when I talk about touring. Number one is the tour manager, which I've already touched on. They have to have a 98% approval rating to keep a job with us, and that comes right from our passengers. So that survey that comes back, that's how they're rated. So we truly have the best and the best. Without a doubt, the transportation throughout and the accommodations, a huge aspect of that. And then probably the third most important is that culinary experience, knowing the best restaurants, really knowing where to go eat. Listen, I don't want to stay in a Motel 6 20 miles outside of town and eat McDonald's. I want to be able to go into some of these local restaurants, sit down, have the barbecue, and learn about those kind of areas. And so for me, touring is about removing the headache, and it's about making sure that when you go to these areas, you're truly immersed in the culture, which a lot of times we miss. We really do when we travel. We drive by things. We don't know to stop. And that's something that touring is all about.
And you've got something rather unique in your catalog, and that is the Explorations product, which is small group touring. This is getting more and more popular, but I think y'all are one of two or three worldwide that are doing small group tours, even in the United States. Give me some insight. Let's talk about that exploration, that small group tour, because when we think of touring, if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium and the big bus and and I love that movie, by the way. It's a fantastic. If you've not seen it, do not. It's not modern touring, but it is a fun movie to watch. But it even though the classic touring is the big bus tours with 40 plus passengers, small group touring, that's going to be, I think that's going to be hot. I think that's going to be the growing trend moving forward.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's where we see traveling going. With today's TV, media, there's so many different outlets, right? My mom has become a chef from the time that I've graduated, because she's watching these things on TV, and all of a sudden she's a wine expert and she can make these unbelievable lavish meals because she's seen it on TV. And everybody's a foodie. Everybody are these unique expertise. And that's what we want to see in travel. Well, a lot of the old style touring that people kind of talk about, that's a challenge to do. When you have 40, 50 people going into a restaurant, you're not going to get the experience that you may be looking for. And so our exploration is small group travel. We max it out at 24 people. And it really is about creating experiences. So, you know, for instance, in Switzerland, we have an all-train experience. You never get on a motor coach. You never do anything but take the trains. And I can tell you, kind of like Colorado and Canada that we mentioned, there's no better way to see Switzerland than by train. I've done it. I've seen it. It's unbelievable. You know, we go in, we become a chocolatier. We walk to a privately owned winery that we're the only people that are there. You know, we stay at a reserve in South Africa that there are 19 people that can be on the reserve at one time. Collette are the 19 people that are there when we're there. You know, understanding that instead of a cooking demonstration, which a lot of people have seen, hey, this is how you make some great, you know, pasta. We're going to actually have a cooking class. It's going to be 2 to 3 hours. You're making that dinner. So the explorations package is about removing the thought of what touring is about and creating experiences that you can truly value. I think that's what people want. They want, everybody wants to kind of make their own experience. Everybody experiences things differently. So with the explorations package, we've kind of built that in. Small group, we max it out at 24. Like I said, you know, we average about 15 people on those tours. So we may max it out at 24, but a lot of times you're talking about 6 to 7 couples. And there's a lot of areas that you can tell me you're going to go out and do it on your own. You know what happens when you go to the Coliseum? You end up with a group. You go to the Vatican, you stand in line, you end up with a group. And so why not end up with a group that you already started with, that can have those experiences? And that to me is where we see travel going. And I don't think that there's any way to go about it. People are becoming more educated. There's so much information out there. They want their own experiences, and traveling in small groups gives us a lot of flexibility. You know, maybe we don't stay at a 5-star hotel, but we're at a 4 and 5-star, you know, unique hotel that's right on the cliffs that nobody else is staying at. It's very boutique-y. You know, we have private guides to be able to go in certain areas that we can't do with 40, 50, 60 people. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with the explorations package.
And talk about an easy way to get the family together, especially if you've got even a mid-sized family. You get 2, 3, 4 families together. You've bought the tour at that point. It's your tour, you know, or it just even if four couples that spread out over the country. It's a great way to get together and see one another, spend some quality time with one another, and you're not lost in a crowd that way.
You're not. Absolutely. You become part of the tour. It's interactive. You know, I've been on an exploration tour where we had 10 people, and all of a sudden I had 10 really good friends leaving out of there because we were truly immersed in it in a way that you can never operate. You know, one of the things that we have in Switzerland, and I keep going back to that, the Hidden Trails is one of my favorite tours, but we have an e-biking experience, right? So we're going to go on the Absinthe Trail, which here in the States, sometimes we think about absinthe as a very dangerous alcohol beverage that has had a bad rap. But at one point, you know, it's a very famous trail that, hey, I want to go on an e-biking experience. Well, maybe I'm a little out of shape and I can't ride. Hey, it's got a little motorized experience. So all you have to do is push a button and you can, you know, leisurely enjoy a nice little ride through the Absinthe Trail and learn a little bit about it with your tour manager. You know, those are the experiences that we're trying to accomplish with that.
Now, we had a question come through on the chat, and I'm going to have you go ahead and address it publicly. The start times for the small group tours versus the start times for the large group tours, because most large group tours, whether it's Collette or with anybody else, start pretty early, and for good reason. You've got to manage a large group to get them out from breakfast onto the bus and onto your first activity so you can get everything in. But with a small group tour, you are able to be a little more flexible with your time frame.
We are. You know, any time that you have a travel day, you may be moving around. You know, I do tend to tell people, yeah, you're going to leave a little bit early. We may have to cover X amount of ground. When we're in the same city, multiple stays, we really try to balance that out. Now, I have people that eat breakfast at 5 a.m. and I have people that eat breakfast at, 7:45 walking out the door. So we try to balance that as well so that it is a vacation. We're not trying to put people on time schedules, but we also want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to experience what they're looking for. With the smaller group, you hit the nail on the head. We have a little bit more flexibility. We don't have to get as many people. Anytime you travel, I've noticed, at least in touring, there's 3 types of travelers. You know, there's the always late, which is my wife. That's why I tell her wrong times the places we're going. You have the photographer, as you had mentioned yourself, who tends to lag a little bit because they got to get that perfect shot while they're there. So sometimes you might need a little extra time. And then there's just the wanderer, the person who gets lost looking in the windows and they take a wrong corner down the street and you got to track them down or whatever the case is. So we kind of allow a little bit of flexibility for that and the timing. And so we do tend to have everybody get their breakfast, maybe go for a walk in the morning before they come back. And we tend to get started a little bit later than I think your normal touring would probably go about.
I want to transition. We're talking with Kenny Judd today of Collette Vacations, which is just a wonderful century-old tour operator. Not too many tour operators can say that they're a century old, and so congratulations on that. That really is something special to talk about. Another unique product that y'all have, and you've got some wonderful domestic offerings here, is your spotlight stays, where you are not jumping from hotel to hotel every other night. You're in one place for the entire trip. And you've got, notice Nashville was in there, San Antonio was in there, Denver was in there, New Orleans was in there. Give us some insight into that product.
Yeah. So just like, the explorations, we're trying to identify, what do people want to do on these tours? Where do they want to go? In my job, I've been doing this for a long time. And I always ask people, why do you love cruising? And the number one thing I hear is, I don't have to pack and unpack. So we thought, okay, so if you don't want to pack and unpack, our first thought was, if you tell me you've cruised Italy, I'm going to tell you, you haven't seen Italy. Because if you port in Rome, you may drive 2.5 hours into Rome from the port. You're going to get a few hours. I mean, in Italy, you can barely get lunch in 2 to 3 hours, and then you're going to have to hop back on that motor coach and port back out. So we wanted to create a product that allowed you not to have to pack and unpack and move around and spend the time on the motor coach, but truly experience different cities. Some of the cities that you just rattled off are unbelievable cities with so much to offer that saying there 1, 2, 3 days isn't enough. There's just too much to see and too much to do. So we created our Spotlight line. It's a great line because it gives a lot of balance. It's about 50% touring and about 50% free time. So people really have the opportunity to explore on their own, but also take some of the tours, the behind the scenes, the Grand Ole Opry, even Nashville. We're doing some of these different things. New York, we're staying right in Times Square. So, hey, I have free time. Maybe we have 2 Broadway shows, but maybe there's one that I really want to see that we don't have. So I want flexibility to go do that. The Spotlight line is kind of designed to do that. We're going to have touring. You're going to see all of the must-sees, but you're also going to learn about some of the unique areas. Also outside. So you brought up San Antonio. I'm from Oklahoma. I spent a lot of time in Texas, hill country. A lot of people don't realize Fredericksburg. You drive out towards that area out of San Antonio. There's some great wineries. There's some great beer stops, some great German food, but it's also a beautiful country that a lot of people, when they think of Texas, don't realize that's there. So, we're going to spend the day driving out there. We're going to stop off at LBJ's ranch and we're going to learn a little bit about those. So it's not just about, hey, I want to go see this one city. It's about learning the surrounding areas, but really immersing yourself and not having to pack and unpack, which we know can be such a drag sometimes. Some of the destinations, you just have to do that. The other ones, we want you to sit back and relax. New Orleans, incredibly popular. New York, like you talked about. And we're going to be looking to add those as well. We understand Santa Fe one we just added this year was our #1 selling spotlight. And, in a million years, I never would have thought Santa Fe, New Mexico but there's so much history. The food is unbelievable there. You nailed it with Taos and the Native American history. There's so much more than people realize. And that's why we created that spotlight line. And it's a little bit different than most of our competitors where, some people would call that kind of a hosted tour where you would come in, you're kind of on your own. They may tell you places to go. Ours is still fully guided. So everything is still taken care of. It's just split a little bit more leisure time. But everything that we do is fully guided, tour manager, everything's taken care of.
And I love that fact that you're spending time there. As much as I love cruising, and I really do, get me on a boat for 7 days, I'm a happy camper. But if you're trying to see and experience culture on a cruise ship, you're really only going to get a taste of it because you're only in port. Depending on the port, maybe as little as 4 or 5 hours. You may be overnight if you're on one of the luxury ships on a couple of ports. You might get an overnight or two, especially in Europe. But for the most part, for the mass market cruise lines, you're lucky to get 8 hours sometimes, and that includes time to get off, join the bus, go tour, go have lunch, come back, maybe do an afternoon tour, maybe not. You may all on board. Maybe the boat may be sailing at 6, but all on board's at 5, and you better not miss that boat or it will sail without you. So having that time to really explore and get to know the town that you've dared to go see, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I look forward to y'all adding more to that product line. I think it's going to be a wonderful option for folks. If you have a question, folks, I encourage you to get in the chat box. I will get back over here, and I will. I'm going to open up or wave your hand. There's a little hand option there, and I will come to you. I think Margaret's got the first one, and then Ted and Nancy, I'll come to you next. But I'm going to give Kenny a chance to answer any questions you may have. We're talking domestic travel in general and the wonderful places to see in the United States and in Canada. But Collette literally travels the world and has some wonderful opportunities to go see the world this wonderful world that we live in. So, Margaret, let me open you up. Let me find your microphone here.
We're open.
And Margaret.
And I see Margaret's question here on Mount Rushmore, and she's spot on. We stay at the Hilton Gardens in Rapid City, which is a little bit outside of downtown. And 9 times out of 10, we do try to stay in the 4- and 5-star hotels. For instance, New Orleans, we're in the French Quarter. South Dakota and Rapid City is a little bit of an anomaly. Some of the hotels downtown that we had used in the past had really been run down. They didn't have a lot of the amenities. And so, we always look at that when we are choosing our hotels. We always list them because we're not going to ever hide where we're staying. We want people to be able to see that. The one that you particularly bring up, you're right, and we are looking at that. The challenge is there's not a lot of newer hotels in Rapid City that have the amenities. Hilton Garden Inn actually just opened about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's a fairly new hotel. And there's a shuttle that kind of comes in and out each day downtown. So that's one of the reasons, and one of the few that we stay outside of there. Most of the time we are right in the heart of the cities. New York, we're at Times Square. New Orleans, we're in the French Quarter. Some of those areas. Rapid City is a little bit of an outlier on the spotlights, but we always have it listed so you can see.
All right. Go ahead, Margaret.
But that's the reason that I haven't taken that tour. I wanted to go out there in May, and that hotel is one of the complaints over and over. And when you say that there's a shuttle, also a complaint. It doesn't run often enough to make it worth signing up for that particular tour. So
yeah, no, there's always challenges in travel, and you're spot on. We were in a hotel that was right in the heart of the city, and we actually got a ton of complaints that the hotel had been run down. So, there are certain areas we have to balance that out a little bit. You're spot on. We brought that up. It is something our product team is looking at. How do we overcome some of these challenges without building a hotel ourselves, which our owner isn't quite ready to do. I've tried to tell him to buy some planes and some different things, but he's not listening to me. But you're spot on, and there is some challenges. That one is a little bit challenging because it's a little bit older, and they want to keep the uniqueness of the downtown area, so you don't see these high-rise new hotels coming in, and that's because they don't want to damage the history. And so you're spot on. I agree. We have assessed it, and we're still looking at it every year.
I think anytime you're traveling to remote areas, whether it's the United States or anywhere else, sometimes the adventure of travel is at more adventure than vacation, and it is what it is. I'm going to pick on Alaska because as much as I love Alaska, the hotel offerings are not fabulous up there, and they're pretty basic in many respects. So sometimes it's what is more important. Is it the luxuriousness of a hotel? And if that's the case, there are some wonderful hotels to go visit, and some wonderful cities to go explore. Or is it the uniqueness of the location, and sometimes the character? Sometimes that downtrodden character is just a part of the story that's of that location.
It is. You're spot on.
I have a second question. I have traveled with Collette, And I'm from New England, Massachusetts, and Dedham Savings Bank has a travel club. Okay.
Yeah.
The banks up here have travel clubs. Last year we were in the Canadian Rockies, and it was a great trip. We had a great driver, a great travel guide. One of the places that we stayed in Jasper, okay, had just opened for the season. Okay, so when we went there for dinner, the chef wasn't prepared for a group. Okay, the staff wasn't trained. We waited 2 hours for dinner. People in rooms, the rooms weren't ready, meaning they were assigned to rooms that weren't ready for the season. And yet we were staying there 2 or 3 nights. And I wondered what kind of research goes into the fact that we were staying at a resort that wasn't ready for tourists.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely dive into a lot of research. Our product people, we don't just contract out. Our people work for us, so they go and stay there. Any of those seasonal destinations, and Canada is definitely one of those, the beginning of the season can always be a bit of a challenge. And that is because it's typically not the same employees from the years past. They're bringing in younger people. They're bringing in new staff they have to train. And, you know, I agree with you. I try to tend to tell my people, listen, if you're going to a seasonal destination, you kind of want to go a little bit later in the season. Those people have been there a little bit longer. They've kind of worked the kinks out. But most of these destinations, Banff Springs, for instance, has been closed all winter, right? So now you have one of the most iconic hotels in all of Canada. And you can probably guarantee that about half of that staff coming in is brand new people. And so sometimes it takes a little bit. And anytime you're going into a seasonal destination, it can be some challenges. We do absolutely contract, we research, we do everything we can, but we don't own the areas and we can't hire all of their staff. And so sometimes, you know, there are some challenges with that. And, you know, I agree. And I lived in Massachusetts for a couple of years. I lived in Fairhaven. Now I'm from Oklahoma, so I say Fairhaven, but I got in trouble when I lived up there by not saying Fairhaven. But so I spent some time up there and I know Dedham well. But yeah, it is one of those things that seasonal areas, you know, in Vermont, New England, that's a perfect example. You know, when you get up into the fall foliage, a lot of these hotels are opening up. They're at the end of their season in fall foliage, so they're running like a well-oiled machine. But in May, there's some rust and some things you got to kick off the dirt.
Ted and Nancy, I want to come to you guys. You all had a question for Kenny.
Oh, you know what? Nancy and I have been in every state in the United States on a motorcycle. I guess what we're looking to do is maybe take a Mississippi trip on the Mississippi River, things like that. Unique things. We've traveled abroad a lot, but after this coronavirus thing, and there's no way I'm going across the pond to get stared at. A comment for Kenny and for Margaret. If you want to see Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, Devil's Tower, the Badlands, Needle Highway, Crazy Horse Monument, you stay in Deadwood, South Dakota, and it is a touch of Americana that you'll never ever most regular people never see it. It's cool. There's casinos, dance halls. That's where they serve buffalo. Nancy and I go there every year. We go for Sturgis for the motorcycle rally. But you can go there other times during the year. And it is a rush, man. It is fun beyond belief. And
great show on HBO too.
Yeah, and Kenny, there's a hotel called the Hills. It's a Best Western, the Hills. What a great, clean, neat place. It is fantastic. We stay there. It's about 30 miles from Deadwood. Ride. It's great, but you stay in Deadwood, South Dakota is a fun place.
Well, I can see Kenny is making notes on that, and I know he'll take that to corporate and the tour managers and tour directors up there and tour designers is what the word I was looking for.
And there's one other thing. There's a thing called the Adirondack Balloon Festival in Lake George, New York. I don't know if you have a tour up there, but I mean, I know a lot of people who would love to do that. It's not like the Albuquerque one, but there'll be, I don't know, 180 balloons right in the middle of the Adirondack Mountains. It really is. It's fun. You got Lake George there and all that stuff.
Oh, Ted, you mentioned river cruises, and the United States. You know, we've got some wonderful rivers to cruise up and down. Collette, Kenny, you're not there yet. You've got some great river cruise offerings in Europe, but you haven't added any of the domestic ones to your itineraries yet. Do you anticipate adding either the Mississippi, Snake and Columbia, the Hudson, which is honestly the Hudson in the fall? That's on my personal bucket list, and that's one I'm really looking forward to doing one of these days. Are y'all looking at possibly adding any of those travel options to your catalog at any time in the future?
You know, it's funny. Every year we talk about it. Every year it is definitely on our watch list, if you will. You know, river cruising is a European thing that is much stronger. There are some companies, the Snake River and the Mississippi, and some of those that do that. The challenge that we have had is from a price and a value standpoint. They've got a pretty good stranglehold, and so, you know, companies like Collette don't always fit into certain areas like that. We are absolutely investigating or researching. We're looking at it because I do think there's a great opportunity there. We just haven't quite cracked it yet, but every year it's on that watch list and we talk about it. It's really funny because the Snake River is something I hear about constantly. But you know, we're working on it. We just aren't quite there yet.
You know, it's if you're interested at all in exploring America's great rivers, and I do mean great rivers. The Mississippi has multiple companies that go up and down the Mississippi. There's several companies that do the Snake and Columbia rivers, which includes a Lewis and Clark expedition, either on a modern cruise ship or on a restored steamship. You've got the Hudson River up in New York. Or even the St. Lawrence in Canada. We'll go ahead and throw the St. Lawrence, and the St. Lawrence is a beautiful river. I got the opportunity to sail on that here this last year. If you're at all interested in any of that or cruising America's coastlines on a smaller ship, feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call. I'd be thrilled to talk to you about those options and opportunities. If you have a question, go ahead. Ted, I'm going to come to you in just a second. But if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand or throw it in the chat box, and I will come to you as quickly as I can. So, Ted, let me unmute you, and you are live, sir.
How about train trips?
Yeah, Colette's got a number of wonderful train trips.
We do, and it's one of the popular ways to travel. We have two in Canada that we operate with. We partner with Rocky Mountaineer on one, and we partner with Via Rail. We do quite a few different mixtures. We do a train trip in Alaska. We do one. We take two different experiences in Colorado that we utilize. So depending on the region that we are in, we have an entire train trip through Switzerland, Italy. We have some different experiences. So yeah, we always look at the area. One of my favorite train trips that I've ever taken is I went to London and Paris, and I took the monorail there and went under the Channel, which was just absolutely fantastic. 2 hours and 15 minutes from London to Paris. And so, yeah, we always look at those experiences, but probably our most popular here domestically or here in North America are Canada, Colorado, and some of those areas. And we are looking at a couple in California as well. One being the wine train, which I know is always popular.
On that.
The wine train.
Wine train. I got to say this though, because everybody gets this confused. The wine's not free on the wine train. The wine, you got to pay extra for the wine on the wine train. That up. But it is a wonderful, wonderful trip through some beautiful countryside and some really fabulous food, from what I understand. Anybody else have any questions for us this afternoon? Just go ahead and raise your hand, throw them in the chat box. If not, Kenny, I'm going to give you the last word on this. Give us the selling point. What's unique about Collette? And I know it, but I want the folks to hear it from you. And you got to. And I'm sorry, you've got to talk about that door-to-door service that you guys offer. So give me Give me your sales pitch on Collette Vacations.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me, and I appreciate the feedback. It is something that we're open to. I appreciate everybody being on the call. Who we are at Collette, and I think times like now show it more than ever. I think, first of all, Doug, this is fantastic having the opportunity to still connect with people, because you can see there's still a hunger for travel. So who are we and why are we different than other companies? Number one is the door-to-door sedan. So if you go to your local travel agent and you book your tour through your travel agent, you're going to have the opportunity to travel on a sedan. We're going to pick you up at your house, take you to and from the airport, which I can tell you, I've lived in Massachusetts. I've lived and I've traveled out of Dallas. And it's not the airport itself that is the challenge. It's always getting to those airports that is some of the biggest challenges, not to mention the amount of money that you pay while you park. We're going to take all of that away from you. The other fantastic thing is, we have a cancellation and a waiver insurance that is 100% full refund up until 24 hours before you depart, and you get money back. So we're one of the only tour operators out there giving money back right now. And we want you to understand that it's always safe. It's always great to book. You don't have to worry about it. With Collette, you have that waiver. It's going to cover you medically on tour, as well as give you that opportunity to get your money back. And I think today's times is showing that more than ever. I'm tired of hearing nightmare stories about vouchers and wait times and airlines and whatever it is. And the third, and I think this is probably, Douglas, to me, the most important thing that you can do. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's these online booking areas, and anybody here has a Costco membership, and it's not to call and say anything bad about those companies. It's to kind of explain the difference in what your travel professional, your local travel agent can do. They're there to take care of you. They understand the difference in the companies and where you're going. And to be candid, sometimes they know what's better for you before you do. But there's a lot of marketing schemes out there that'll take great pictures of a hotel or a great resort until you get there. Or if something goes wrong, who are you calling? This phantom number on an email. And so, for me, one of the biggest things that we do is we want to support our agent partners. It doesn't change the price. It doesn't change anything for you as a traveler, except for you're getting unbelievable service from somebody who's been doing this a long time. And that's really where we want to strive, and where we want to move forward is really making people understand what a travel agent do and why you should never, ever, ever, ever book without your travel agent, because they're there to take care of you. And so in coordination with the partnership, you're going to get the waiver, you're going to get the insurance, you're going to get the great experience in the tour manager, you're going to get the sedan service as well. And with that, it's not going to change the experience. It's only going to enhance it for you as travelers. So from Collette, that's what we are on. We are financially stable. We're off the books. We're debt free. We're family owned. We're not going anywhere. This crisis is nothing but an opportunity for us to shine. And so coming out of this, the reason that everybody's on this and the reason the recorded webinar and people are going to watch it later is because they want to travel. So when that happens, you pick up the phone, you call Douglas. You have questions for me, please. Douglas has all my information. Let me know. We want the feedback. We want the interest. We want the questions, because we only want to get better. But coming out of this, we're excited what 20 and 21 still has the opportunity to show.
Look, you touched on something, and I'm gonna have to. I want to finish on this. Is travel insurance one is I cannot stress having travel insurance enough. Whether you were traveling domestically or whether you're traveling internationally, stuff happens. And you never know when it's going to happen, whether it's the pandemic situation we're in right now, or whether you fall and just trip and twist your ankle. I fell on a cruise ship. Well, I wasn't on the ship. I was actually on one of their excursions. I busted my wrist and a $500 lens, which I was really not happy about. But the insurance paid for my wrist. It didn't pay for my lens, but it paid for my wrist to get my wrist fixed. So Murphy never takes a vacation. Stuff happens. And so many of the insurance companies these days are dropping their cancel for any reason policies. So having an operator that offers a full money back guarantee on their offerings is something really unique, especially in this day and age, and probably moving forward. I don't know when that cancel for any reason option will come back. With third-party providers. So as much as I love third-party insurance, and I think in general it's better than most cruise line and tour operator insurance, I can't say that about Collette. They really do. They really do step up in that regard. And the second thing I want to end on is, if you are not working with a local travel agent, and everybody on this call should know me, but we're also going live on Facebook. I'm Douglas Burns. I am the chief cook and bottle washer of Culturally Creative Travel. And if the phone rings, I'm the one that's going to answer it. I promise you. I will be the one calling you back. I've not grown so big as to even get my wife to answer the phone yet. I can't afford my wife yet. So I encourage you to use a travel agent. It does not cost you anything more to use a travel agent booking your travel. I promise you, a professional travel agent will work with your budget and find the best travel opportunity and options for you, and try to guide you along your travel needs and travel desires. So, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you have any questions at all for Kenny, for myself, about Collette Vacations, about traveling domestically in the United States and or Canada, or if you want to venture further abroad and travel and see what all this big, beautiful globe has to offer, I would love to talk to you. My contact information will be out there on the emails and on the I'll eventually edit this and put a title card on there. So, but anyway, do give me a call. You can visit my website at culturallycreativetravel.com and see all the various offerings I have to offer. In addition to, and those are conversation starters, folks. They're just conversation starters, because I want to hear from you. I want to know where you want to go see, what you want to go see, and where you want to go travel. So thanks so much for joining us today. Another wonderful happy hour. Enjoy your day. Christos Anesti for those who are celebrating, and we will see you down the road. Thank you so much.
Cheers.